So then, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Schools Forum meeting of 2024-25. Jane, I was expecting one external guest, Mark Lambell from SDSA, but I can't see him on my screen. I'm assuming he hasn't joined us yet.
He has. He's actually sat watching as we speak. So it depends on if you want him.
There we are. I can see him now.
Oh, who's put all these people in? Hang on. Bear with me. Right. We seem to have everybody with us. Yep.
Okay, I'll make a proper start then. So, colleagues, I'm just going to introduce Mark to you, who some of you may or may not know. Mark is from the SDSA. He's observing our meeting today, and we are planning to have some facilitated sessions led by Mark and some of his colleagues to really work with us on Schools Forum on further improving our efficiency and effectiveness. So I think, Mark, you're just going to be sitting in the background and observing what goes on today. So welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we've got quite a packed agenda. I'll quickly run through a few housekeeping topics and reminders about expectations because it's been a few months since we last met. So if we can have mics off whilst somebody is talking and only turn it on when you make a contribution. Hands up in the normal way on Teams using the function. In terms of the way that we work using the papers that have been submitted in advance, we take these as being read by all members, and colleagues that are leading a particular paper or agenda item will give a brief synopsis, coverage of the highlights. We'll have some discussion questions, and then if it's appropriate for us to make decisions, we will do so. Reminder that these meetings are, of course, recorded and public, so it goes without saying high levels of professionalism and respect should be the norm, and just a reminder to everybody that we are representing our sector and not our individual institutions. So that is the welcome out of the way. I would ask Jane now, have we had any apologies that we need to take note of?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've received apologies from Oliver Teasel and Councillor Tim Smith.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 2 then, which is minutes and actions from the previous meeting. So if we can just take those one page at a time. The meeting was on the 9th of May. In the large pack, it starts at page 7, but I'll just refer to them as pages 1, 2, 3, and 4, etc. So people, if we could just have our hands up if there is anything that you want to query or challenge in these minutes, please. So page 1 of the minutes. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. And page 6, where we captured a couple of actions. Jane, I didn't see any hands going up there, so I think we can take those as a true reflection of the meeting that we had on the 9th of May.
That's correct, Chair. No hands were raised.
And actions were action number 1, details regarding the costings of placements to be distributed to schools, and that was allocated to Kawinda and Andrew. I think we only have Andrew. Andrew, no. Could you give us an update on that? Oh, I do apologise, Kawinda. I can see you at the top of my screen now.
Andrew, would you like to take that one?
I haven't distributed anything yet, and that action remains open. We were going to go through it as part of the Schools Forum finance subgroup, but due to workloads around the end of the school year with the general election, we couldn't get that information pulled together quickly enough to inform the Schools Forum finance subgroup and let them have that data to interpret. So I've agreed the new date with Stuart's PA, the chair of the Schools Forum finance subgroup, today, and I will be providing that information in line with the terms and reference agreed as part of the finance subgroup, and I will be distributing that out. To at least 2 weeks before the start of the meeting, alongside any data there. So I haven't done it yet in terms of those costings.
Okay, thank you for that update, Andrew. Jane, I suggest we leave that as an open action, but I think we've got reassurance there that we're on the case, and the working party will, the finance subgroup will be addressing that the next time they meet. All right then, so item number 2 of the actions was a briefing and a copy of the School Life Parental Survey to be resent to all schools to gain further feedback from parents and children, and that was allocated to Jill and/or Kulwinder.
I can take that one, Chair. The survey was circulated to all schools along with the offer of the survey to be, the findings was circulated to all schools along with the offer of having the survey re-administered by the schools themselves. None of the schools have responded to taking up that offer, but the information has been shared, Chair.
Thank you for that. Right, we'll move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Have we got any?
No, there are no hands raised, Chair, so it looks
Okay.
like nobody has any conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Number 4 then, which I will hand over to you for, Jane, is the election of chair and vice chair.
Thank you, Chair. We received 2 nominations. We received 1 nomination for Ben Solly to continue as chair and 1 nomination for Steve Cox to continue as vice chair. As per the Constitution, they can both be re-elected as chair and vice chair respectively on the agreement that the forum is happy because they both come from the same membership category. And also it would be good to note that this would be their last year of holding the positions, because as per the Constitution, you're only allowed a maximum of 4 years. So the nominations are that we have Ben Solly for the chair for the year 2024/2025. So that is open to members of the committee to vote on. So all those in favour of Ben continuing as chair, please raise your hand. Sorry, Craig, thank you. That looks like it's unanimous, Chair. So thank you. And next we have all those in favour of Steve Cox continuing as vice chair for another year. Can you please raise your hand? That's unanimous, Chair. So I will put that in the minutes that the Schools Forum has agreed that Ben Solly and Steve Cox will be the chair and vice chair respectively of the Schools Forum for the academic year 2024/25, and that the Schools Forum has agreed that they can be chair and vice chair as they are from the same membership category.
Thank you, Jane. So the next item for us then is allocated 10 minutes, and it is the schools forum membership. So this is split into part A and part B. So part A, which is the designated special provision or enhanced resource provision representative. I've had a couple of conversations with colleagues outside of this meeting. Jill, would you like to give us a bit of a overview on where we are with our thinking on that one?
Yes, we had a look at that in terms of the Constitution and the good practice guidance. And whilst there is a category for a special school member, there isn't a category that this to have a designated specialist provision or enhanced resource provision representative as a voting member. So I think, Chair, that we thought that perhaps as it would not be a voting membership, that it would be better that that responsibility sat within the general membership, but that we ensured that in all of our decision making and actions that we considered the implications for those provisions within our thinking.
Yes, I was comfortable with that. I just want to put it out to the rest of the group to take views or questions. Okay, so I think we will proceed as planned, as Jill has just explained. And that then moves us on to item B, which is vacancies. This is an item for discussion. On page 13, you'll see that we have a couple of vacancies in the academies and the academies governor section. So Jane, would you be prepared to just talk to us about what the process would be to address those vacancies?
Thank you, Chair. Yep. If I just bring up the relevant Schools Forum membership, let us have a look. So, Jill, am I correct in thinking that Steve Cox was previously the representative for the special schools and that he will now be the representative for academies?
That's because of the
change
in,
yeah,
the change in I can't think what the word is. Not is it determination of the school from maintained school to academy, and no longer having the special school as part of that. Yes.
So that's okay. So that would leave us with one vacancy for academies and one vacancy for a governor from the academies. That latter position has been vacant for some time, and it's really now very urgent that we get that filled. We have contacted and written and emailed all the academies asking for representation from their governors. We haven't had any response. I know we've asked this before, but we really need a governor representation.
Thank you, Jane. I think within our roles as school forum members, I think we need to advocate with the governing bodies that we work closely with, and really stress the importance of this group having governor representation from the county. So if we can take it as an action, please, Jane, for us to go away and do that work, and then report back if we have any governors within the boards that we work with that would be interested in fulfilling that vacancy. I can see Craig's got his hand up, so I'll pass over to Craig now.
Yeah, just a quick question on that. Are we able to have a governor or trustee from the same academy as if we're a member already?
Shall I take that one, Jade? Because we looked into that. There shouldn't be two members from the same school, but it can be from the same academy trust.
Oh, okay. All right,
so because particularly in Rutland that would make life very difficult. I don't think we'd get but yeah, so whilst they shouldn't be from the same school, shouldn't be representing the same school, they can be within the same trust.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think that concludes item 5 on Schools Forum membership, unless I look around the room and anybody else has got anything else to say on that matter. Jill?
Just to say that we should also be agreeing substitutes within this as well at the same time, just to ensure that there are sufficient substitutes still, Jane. And a substitute is agreed by the forum. They're not necessarily a substitute for, so Ben, for sake of argument, it wouldn't be that if you couldn't come, it'd have to be someone from UCC. It would be somebody else that's from the same membership group.
And that's where we have a couple of vacancies. So I can see that we've got a vacancy for Academy Governors Reserve. Well, we need to get the initial slot filled first. The maintained primary schools. Do we have any left? Is there one?
Yes, one.
One? Is that Stephen?
Yeah.
So
my deputy head teacher's fine for that. That works, my deputy head teacher.
So are you happy to propose your deputy head, Stephen?
Yeah, I've already read the substitute minutes with this and she agreed to that, so yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's okay with everyone. It's Louise Gamble, her name is Louise Gamble.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Stephen. And then we have a vacancy for a reserve in the private, voluntary and independent early years. So Lucy, could we possibly ask you to maybe drum up a bit of interest there to find a deputy?
Absolutely. I had kind of hoped that I was coming with positive news, a bit like Stephen, but I haven't yet found somebody. But by the next meeting, for sure, Jane, I'll let you have the details.
That's great. Thank you, Lucy. Trade unions. I'm not really sure who I would contact for that. Would the local authority have the necessary contacts there to ask who could be the reserve for us?
Yes, absolutely. I will contact the trade unions, and again, I will write to them and ask for a representative. And I will report back to the next meeting.
Thank you. And a reserve for post 16. So Stuart, would this be something that Oliver could possibly ask at Harrington to see if there's a reserve?
Yeah, of course. What are there any criteria that he needs, or is it just a member of staff? Yeah, I'll sort that
just
out.
A member of staff, as far as I understand, Stuart.
I'll get one of the deputies to do it. Be fine.
Yeah, member staff's fine.
Excellent, thank you. Right, so hopefully by the next time we meet, we'll have a full roster of members and reserves. People can go out there and use their powers of persuasion. Right, so the next item then is 6, and we need to approve the updated Schools Forum Constitution and rules for conduct for this academic year. So this is pages 15 to 32 in the pack. Obviously, we take this as an item that we have read, digested and understood. I'll give members of the group the opportunity to ask questions or make comments about this now. So if there's any comments or questions, please do put your hand up. I can't see any on my screen, Jane. You're shaking your head as well. So I'm going to take that we are approving this document.
Sorry, can we put it to the vote just so I can get the official approval?
Absolutely. So I'll hand over to you for that.
Thank you. So all those in favour of approving the Schools Forum Constitution and the rules of conduct for the academic year 2024-25, can you please raise your hand? Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous. That's all approved.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, then. So the next item I will be handing over to Andrew, who's going to provide us with a finance update. So we have two items here, Andrew. 10 minutes for the first one, 5 minutes for the second. I'll hand over to you now, sir.
Sorry, Chair. Stephen, you still have your hand raised. Do you have a question? No. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, Andrew, over to you.
Hi everyone. I'll run through quickly. We are asking for two positions. Two things in the first report. One is to note the position on a dedicated schools grant, and the second one is to agree to continue the transfer of the 0.5% to the High Needs block from the schools block, and that will equate to approximately 160,000 moving from the schools block to the High Needs block. The overall position hasn't moved too much from what we reported at the last schools forum, so we're still reporting. I think it was around 1.8 million overspend on the TSG. Sorry, for quarter one. It's moved to 1.9 million at quarter two, so a slight deterioration in there. That continues to be the pressure in relation to the High Needs block. And we've got a total deficit of around £5 million, 4.9 million to £5 million. You know, it's quite a stark chart, the next one, when you look at it. So it does rise. If things continue the way they are, the deficit will continue to rise until we get to about 18.3 million by 29-30. So we are continuing to see those high needs increases. Just to give you a bit of background data on where we are in terms of EHCPs. So we continue to see EHCPs increase, and we currently have 385 EHCPs, and we agreed a further 30 EHCPs. Sorry, and we have a further currently that are being assessed at the minute. The table below shows the number of requests for EHCP and the number agreed for the last 3 years. So you will see in relation to 23-24, although our conversion rate from EHCNAs to EHCPs is relatively low at 34%, the number has stayed fairly consistent across all years. So because we're getting more requests in, obviously, even though the council are working with schools to keep those and agreed less, the number increases and stay consistent across all years, really. So, you know, because of the volume we're getting in and the conversion rate is low, it's very difficult. Unless we stop those requests coming in and keep the conversion rate, we're going to continue to see growth across there. So that was my quick update on the finances. Appreciate it. It was really quick and a quick run through. Happy to take any questions in terms of that.
Okay, colleagues. So hands up if we have any questions or comments for Andrew on that update. We have one from Steve. So, Steve, would you like to go?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, Andrew. I think obviously like you say, it's very stark and the information's interesting. I think it would be interesting to have included, if you've not already included it somewhere else and I've missed it, the number of requests and agreed requests for high needs funding to support the children, because we're being encouraged to not apply for plans and to encourage to support the children in different ways with high needs funding, because obviously that's got to be a big chunk of that. So it'd be interesting to see that as a number in there as well, because otherwise it looks like we've had 82 requests and 28 were agreed. Well, are all of those others being supported by high needs funding as well, or are they not? And I think that would be an interesting thing to see on there as well.
Yeah, I haven't got that data to hand, Steve, but I will happily include those types. I'll include that as a breakdown in terms of how I break down the expenditure on the high needs block, so we can clearly identify that as being an expenditure line within the current DSG.
So just so I understand that clearly, Andrew, you're going to provide that level of detail for the next time we meet and you provide one of these updates for us?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So if you look in the report on the current table, there is a breakdown in terms of in terms of split, in terms of how our expenditure lines in relation to the DSG. What I will do is pull out that support for non-EHCPs as a separate line to the other lines. So we'd have another subjective line within the analysis.
That's really helpful, thank you. So Jane, can we note that down as an action for our next meeting? Cool, Linda, you had your hand up just as Steve and Andrew were talking there. So
I just wanted to reassure Chair that those young people that don't have a plan do have a way forward meeting, and that there is, relative thought given to how to meet those needs without a plan. So just didn't want that to be left in the air that we've only got X number of plans and a number that's quite significant without a plan. They do get additional support. So just to sort of share that. Thank you.
Thank you. And back to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that on the early years block, it does include the additional funding for under twos, but obviously because that's only recently kicked in, the forecasting is pretty much the budget on that. Obviously, as we get more and more data as the year progresses, we'll be able to refine our forecast around that as well, and the reforms that were brought in.
Okay, thank you. So if we're not going to have any other comments or questions on the school's budget for 25-26, then we'll move on to the finance subgroup, although we do need to take a vote, don't we? We need to take a vote on the transfer of 0.5%. So yes, Jane, if you could coordinate that vote, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yet the Schools Forum is being asked to agree to continue to transfer the 0.5% to the high needs block. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Two, three. That's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. And do we have any abstentions? If you could raise your hand, please. Thank you. That's voted 4 in favour, none against, and 1 abstention, Chair. That is passed.
I thought I saw 6 hands raised for the voting for.
1, 2, 3, 4. And let me just double check. And you are correct. It's me not counting Lucy. Sorry about that, Lucy. I missed you. That's 6 for and 1 abstention. Thank you, Chair.
Super, thank you. Right, so now we can move on to the finance subgroup. So Andrew, I think you're leading this one as well.
Yeah, as I said at the start of the meeting, we haven't met since the last Schools Forum. Combination, the plan was to meet before, in late July, before schools broke up. Due to the election resulted at the council, I wasn't able to provide the information that was required for the group to meet on the particular issue that we was going to be discussing, which was inflationary uplifts on the high needs block for schools places. We will be picking that up at the next meeting. I will be preparing, which is on the 12th of, it's currently penciled in for the 12th of November. I will be providing the data that has been requested in terms of placement costs and average placement costs to enable those discussions to take place. I will also be providing what inflationary uplifts we've been given to non-school placements, so private sector placements as well, so that we've got that full discussion in terms of what is an agreed rate. Obviously, we are in an overspend position on the high needs block. So we will be having those discussions and we will be taking place. And I want to reassure members that we will be, ideally we would have taken the decision now and backdated to the start of the academic year. We will still be undertaking that process for any agreement on any uplift agreed in terms of the high need funding. So if we agree to uplift the banded rates by a certain percentage, that will be backdated to the start of the academic year if that's what Schools Forum agree. So that's as much of an update as I can give in relation to the finance subgroup.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. We've got a couple of questions. Carl first and then Lucy.
Can you remind us, please, Andrew, of the remit of the finance subgroup? Because I don't recollect it precisely what that remit was.
It was mainly to discuss and agree and work collectively as a group to look at the high needs block as an area and how schools can help address the issues in there and pick up any financial matters, because obviously we only have 10 minutes to discuss the financial position in this meeting. So it's to look at the financial position in a bit more detail, in a bit more substance, and put recommendations to Schools Forum around the anything within the DSG.
So, Carl, I think one of the reasons why that subgroup formed was because we recognised last year that transfer at 0.5% year on year is unsustainable, and we don't want to just nod that through as something that happens every single year. And the finance subgroup were tasked with trying to find creative ways and look at the system in a little bit more detail to see if we can find solutions that would make find a way of not having that happen every single year.
Sure, I'm just a little bit concerned that it might become a forum for discussions that would normally and properly take place at Schools Forum to happen amongst a smaller subgroup, and that wouldn't be as transparent. And I raised the issue without knowing the answer, but I think there is the potential for that. So the remit, I think, needs to be quite tight and clearly defined, and with a clear outcome, which is time limited rather than an ongoing thing that morphs into other things.
Yeah. So the item agenda 7B, which is an additional paper, has got the membership of the group, and they've identified their key operating principles. So, I think they've created that in a transparent way, and we have to trust colleagues that they're going to go about that work diligently and report back to the group, and spend more time on it than we are able to in a Schools Forum meeting. So I'd urge colleagues to read through that to make sure that everyone's comfortable with the terms of reference that have been put together there. Lucy, you didn't have opportunity to ask your question yet, so if you want to ask yours now, and then Andrew will come back to you.
It was only just a real point of administration. I've not had an invite if they've been sent out, Jane, for that subgroup, or if they come directly from you, Andrew. But either way, it was just to say that I haven't had one, and I'm mindful that the 12th of November will be here quite quickly.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back on. At least I haven't gone out yet. I only agreed the date today. So I will be sending them out later today. If not, it'll be tomorrow, depending on timescales of this meeting finishing. So you will get it imminently with an agenda, with the agreed agenda items as well. I was just going to come back and say I've now pulled up the terms of reference from the last Schools Forum, which was agreed. So as Ben said, there are key operations of there. It was agreed, the appointments were agreed through Schools Forum, and we did ask for membership and put forward anybody who expressed an interest was put forward as being on the meeting. And obviously the finance subgroup will not be a decision-making body. It is just to inform budgetary practices and recommendations to go forward to Schools Forum to debate. Any of the recommendations that are put forward would have to be agreed at Schools Forum. So any of those discussions, clearly we can have a bit more detailed discussions and informed discussion using the data to help drive forward some of those budgetary recommendations we may want to bring forward as a schools forum, but it is not a decision-making body. So the schools forum finance subgroup is not a decision-making body. So any of the debate held there would have to come to schools forum to be debated by all members.
Yeah, no, I appreciate and understand that. It's just that I think there is a danger of mission drift insofar as I think that if there's a very specific remit for that group and it reports back on that remit, then that's fair enough because there's a specific problem that required greater attention. I think, however, what you've just said to me, Andrew, sounds like a very broad remit, as in almost, you could argue, most of what Schools Forum does. And I think there's a danger then that subgroup starts to recommend things which actually are discussed in a separate forum to the properly elected forum. And I think I just want to express some concerns that doesn't happen.
Stuart, you got your hand up?
Yeah, just to reassure Carl, I'm not a great fan of mission drift. I haven't really got the time. I would like to crack on though, because this has gone on. We haven't got the papers yet. We've only just agreed a date, and we've yet again, hence why I abstained, had to do a transfer without having full information, which I'm uncomfortable about.
Okay, thank you for comments there. Andrew, that meeting in November is obviously a really important one. You're going to get some people together and have some in-depth discussion. So we'll look forward to the update at the next meeting. Does anyone else in the group have anything further to add or ask on that topic? Okay, so we are asked for to review and approve that finance subgroup. So bearing in mind the aforementioned terms of reference that have been provided, which sets out the remit for that subgroup, Jane, I'd quite like to coordinate a vote for that to continue this year. Could you take over at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yet the Schools Forum is being asked to approve the terms of reference for the finance subgroup. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hand. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you, Chair. That's 6 to approve, and we have 1 abstention. So the Schools Forum has approved the terms of reference for the finance subgroup. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to move us on to item 8 now, which is the High Needs Recovery section 19. This is a report from Helga Spry-Shute. It is pages 35 to 38 in the pack. I've not seen Helga on my screen, so is somebody else going to deliver this on her behalf?
Yeah.
Hi, Ben. I'm here.
Helga's on screen too.
Yeah, just joined you. Yeah, the paper. Hi. Yes, the paper was for consideration and for any questions, really. In terms of the highlights of it, it's to highlight the increase in children that are being supported under medical needs, and the numbers on the report you can see have almost trebled from the period of 2020 to current day. This is a report that's including the figures up until the end of the academic year last year. And I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody in terms of the impact of mental health on children. This is a national picture that we're seeing. We have, however, obviously seen a change from 2020 in terms of the type of need. So where we would support children with health needs, they were more likely at that time to be for physical health needs, where we're now seeing about 97%, I think it was last time we checked, that are for mental health concerns. So there's to highlight the numbers, is obviously there's an impact on spend with that in terms of the support that children are receiving. So the model that we've previously provided for children who aren't attending school was set up some time ago. We're talking before 2020, and there is now a need for us to respond to what's in place for young people to make sure we are considering their needs, what's the best intervention, if you like, for those children. How do we best provide an education? How do we all work together, schools and local authority, to make sure that it's appropriate, it's monitored, and that we're considering what the best value is for that provision as well. And this is to bring to your attention really the costs of the different types of support that is in place for children currently. So £42 an hour is an average cost for provision for one-to-one tuition. We know that whilst as a local authority there is a responsibility to provide what's an equivalent to full-time education, we know that one-to-one tuition is not equivalent in hours as what it would be in the classroom. So lots of children will receive 4 or 5 hours of tuition if they are of primary school age, and then that increases up to a child that might be taking the GCSEs and they would receive 10 hours of tuition of core qualifications, maths, English and science. Now, we try to be as flexible as possible. We have worked on the approach with schools that the more time they spend in school, the better, of course. So when we've got a child that is out of school on medical needs, if there's an option for a hybrid arrangement where, for example, if a child is able to make it in for art, that they would continue with their art qualification during that period. So we've had different packages depending on what's available by the school, but also what the child is able to do. We do have some children in alternative provision, which you can see is a cost of up to £460 per day. Now that is unusual that we would put that level of alternative provision in. That is for a full day of a forest school type provision, which tends to be sometimes the only option for smaller children, where older children have got more options available to them. The other option is that some children will go to Willowbank Hospital School. They have 4 places that we are allocated over there, but it is the other side of Leicester. So it is quite a distance to travel. And of course, that has a cost implication as well, with £160 per day for transport. Because of where we're located, obviously with many of our provisions being outside of the county, transport costs you can see are almost as much as the provision costs, and in total last year we spent almost £250,000 on children under Section 19 provision. So we are seeking to trial a new model really for how we will provide provision for children that are struggling with mental health difficulties and any health need really. We have talked to most of you across schools around different options, and that moving forward we might trial something that provides a new innovative way of working to keep young people engaged with their education through the use of what we call AV1 robots. So a little robot that's placed in the classroom that the child can access from the home. And we'll be talking to you a little bit more about options for that at other forums, such as the Rutland Education Access Board, the next meeting there. Now, I think what's important is that we've given as much information and understanding about how that could work, and that will be an option at that meeting where we will have somebody from No Isolation, who is the deliverer of that model, will come along and be able to answer your questions and support that. We also know that there was a change in the guidance from the end of the last academic year, which does put more responsibility on us, and it's about us understanding at what point children should be coming out of school for support and how we can do everything that we can to keep them there. There's a change in the medical needs panel that's now being supported by our integrated care board, and they will support us in making the right decisions for children. And we'll be working with our school support partnership to offer advice and guidance to schools to make sure that we're doing everything that we can do and giving you that support that you need to keep them in school, and consider how we can do that. That's a summary, really. There are a couple of a research paper there and some case studies that are really good to look through to see how that AV1 can work. Just to give you a little bit of a flavour for what that feels like and examples, you know, there's been quite a lot of press attention around AV1s. They were over the summer holidays. I don't know if anybody caught it, but they had them on Good Morning, where a young lad who had cancer and was receiving treatment at home was able to access his classroom through that robot, and the beauty of that is that he can attend all of his classes. He doesn't then have to just have that selected core offer of subjects. He can take all of his suite of GCSEs. Obviously things like PE might be a little bit more tricky. It also allows the child to have access to discussions in the classroom. They can remain in contact with their peers, they can hear what's happening and all the fun stuff, and that will offer the best opportunity for them to be able to come back in. One of the things that we've talked about is the option for schools to trial them while we're in a pilot and use them in the school. So perhaps you might use them in your remove or nurture rooms to allow a child to access some of the classes that they would ordinarily access, and then you've got an option to see how that works as well and to build up confidence there. We also really need to think about our alternative provision and what is available to us in Rutland and how we can make best use of that. And what we would really like to be able to offer is a free tier system, and how that works is something that we need to give consideration to in terms of the report that's underway, that to look at all of our alternative provision across Rutland, and somebody's going to have to remind me of the detailed status report. That's the one. In terms of what the suggestions are of that, what does that tell us? What do we need? What are we lacking? What do we need more of? And what is going to help us keep children in school and support with that early intervention before they get into the point where they're unable to attend? What do we need to provide parents as well? There's lots to consider, and I know lots of you will have good contribution to add to that to help us to consider what would be appropriate. So that's it for now, a summary of the report. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them.
Thank you, Helga. Just looking around the room to see if there are any raised hands. Stephen.
Yeah, Helga, just about the robots. How do we go about looking to get those involved in the school? Is it the usual avenues through our CMH workers, or what is the pathway for that?
You will find that you can now access a new inclusion page, which will give you a referral link to the medical needs section 19 referral. However, in the trial period, we'd be more than happy to talk to you if you've got a case that you'd really like to trial it with and think about how that would work. If you can make contact with Andrea Tyler, and Steve, I'll put her email address in the chat, and you know, say how you think it could work for you. We'll be trialing 5 in the autumn term across the schools, and I think it's really good to think about a case that you might you know already, a young person that you think would benefit. You may know the family, you may feel it's a good case to start with that would be a really good confident place to trial it. I know, for example, we've got a young man that's attending one of our secondary schools. He has a particularly challenging kidney condition and has to receive his treatment at home. Perhaps that would be a good starting place to trial that in the home environment and give him access to all of his lessons while he's taking his GCSEs. That kind of example, I think, is a good starting place for you to give it a go. But I'll pop Andrew's email in the chat, Steve.
Thank you. And the second question is regarding the safeguarding of that, obviously with camera and
yeah.
I know that's obviously an obvious question. Would it be for us to obviously build that into our own policies, or is it something that would come with support with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the trialing the robots, we will have an allocated worker from No Isolation that will be very happy to work with you in schools to help you to, and they will have example policies that you can roll out within your school, be able to help answer any questions and queries that you've got, and we'll give you some advice of good starting points to use them. We will be setting up a session for primaries outside of the rehab meeting, where you'll have an opportunity to hear from No Isolation, and they can give you some support in terms of thinking about, you know, how you can get that off the ground in your school. We do know there are 30 local authorities, I think it's more than 30 local authorities that are actually using No Isolation. We've got Leicestershire very close to us that are using it, and it seems to be the way forward. And we do need to be thinking differently about how we support a wider range of children and how we offer them the best education that they can get, while also thinking about the quickest way to get them back in, which we know is obviously it's important to us all.
Right, okay.
Any more
Thank you.
questions?
No, I think we're all done there. Thank you, Helga. I'm going to move us now on to item 9, which is delivering better value and the SEND programme update. So I think we are behind on our time at the moment, Kulwinder. So if I could ask you to be as concise and efficient as possible, that would be wonderful.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So really what I'd like to start off by saying is delivering better value is reporting in quarters. So the information that I'm about to share is for Q2, and Q2 is from April to the end of June. So some of the things that I might mention, you might have heard in the Schools Forum update in May. So apologies for the repeat there, but that would be the reason for it. So if I may just start by saying that we've got three key work streams: parental confidence, specialist teams, and support. Sorry, yes, beg your pardon. I'll put my camera right on now. Thank you. So with regards to the areas of improvement in those key work streams, what we can share is that, sorry, it's my mouse, it's not wanting to play. Okay, so under the parental confidence work stream, we've held a range of collaborative parental group meetings and culminated that with a conference way back in June. And that was a multi-agency conference, and it was really well received from a range of different practitioners and parents. We've also developed a way forward approach, which has been documented in steps taken, so that it's really helpful to share with families the processes taken when an EHC plan is not actually awarded or issued. And then we've been working together on the survey which we discussed at the last forum. And a range of Mighty Creatives is an organisation that runs young people's integration and engagement sessions. And what we've done is being able to film young people and their experiences of being in an inclusive environment within school. So those are the bits of work that we've done in this quarter around parental confidence. Under our specialist work stream, we've been delivering whole school SEND, making sense of autism, in twilight sessions, and we've had 22 staff attend, and 15 of those reported back saying that the training was really exceptional and that they'd been able to take a lot away from that. Further to the training within settings, we've got 16 primary schools that are receiving nurture training, and this is being rolled out in clusters. We've managed to do level 1 training across all clusters, and we're working on the next stage of that training, which starts November. With regards to delivering within settings, our advisory teachers have been busy delivering work around Down syndrome training and some supported emotional wellbeing training, as well as supporting schools to look at non-named advice non-named advice provision as well. And then we've got the Education, Health and Care Plan Quality Lead, who's been doing deep dives into a range of education, health and care plans that are quite complex, to learn from those plans, to see how we can make sure that we don't, well, we can learn from those plans effectively. And those are delivered as, or will be delivered as cross collegiate training from colleagues from education as well as social care. And we're also doing audit training around our plans to make sure that we learn from the way our plans are written and how they're presented. Finally, speech language communication. That's an area where we're creating a toolkit, and that toolkit should be ready to be launched in November this year. We've got a semi sort of draft launch that's happening next week, so our schools will have a preview to that. And the area for the toolkit will be universal and targeted support to identify the early needs of a young person that might have speech and language communication needs. And for our third area of work, working with early help and social support, what we're trying to do there is support an outreach piece of work from the Family Hub in Oakham, and having a similar operation in Uppingham, and that seems to be going well. Certainly in the Oakham arena, what we've had is information days that have been well received by families, and we're repeating those in the Uppingham area as well. Regards to the data element, which was the fourth and encompassing theme of work, we're making sure that all of our information is underpinned by data, and that we're learning from the data that we collect. So it's evidence-based practice. I've rattled through that, Chair. I really appreciate that, but I'm really happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Kulwinder. Do we have any questions or comments?
No hands raised, Chair.
No, thank you very much. Thank you, Kulwinder. I think I'll move us on then. So this is the Rutland School Sports Partnership update, and there is a paper attached to this which came out slightly after the other papers. So I hope everyone's had the opportunity to read it. So there's been a change in the way that services like school games and other health and sport related activities are delivered across the county, and Bernadette's helpfully put together a paper which explains the current position with some information about how different elements are funded. So Bernadette, if I can just ask you to walk us through that, and then I'll open up the floor for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies to colleagues for the late arrival of this paper. I will assume that you have read it, however, and I'm just conscious that some of this information may not have come to Schools Forum in the past, but felt it was important to share with you how the school sports offer is arranged in Rutland and how it's funded, and open up a discussion with school colleagues on how we might continue it. I think it would be fair to say that it's a very successful and comprehensive programme and offer to our schools, and whilst there's lots of sport events, etc., there's also a number of other projects within that, which include things like the leadership programme, the CPD for schools, etc. So it's quite an extensive offer. Clearly you will see from the costs, from the costs I've included here, that the income is not covering the costs to deliver the offer, and quite a lot of the activity is supplemented by the council's general fund or the public health grant. So it's supplementing some of that and probably masking some of the costs associated with delivering the programme. So that's a consideration. At the moment, we are operating the offer without a formal agreement with schools, and there doesn't seem to be a systematic evaluation process. So whilst I think it's really positive, lots of really helpful and positive feedback, I'm not sure that there's been the opportunity to test that in any systematic way. Not all of the schools are taking up the offer. There are only 11 schools in the school sports partnership. And I think one of the risks is that the offer is built entirely on temporary funding, year-on-year funding, and some of that is only to the end of the financial year, not even to the end of the academic year. There are risks because we've seen some changes in personnel in the team, and whilst we will lose some of our colleagues from what was the Active Rutland team, we are redesigning that. So our offer will be broader than just the sport. And I mentioned there the public health, wider determinants of health. So how we support that healthy weight, the emotional well-being, the living well, changing behaviours, etc. And so some of what that team are doing doesn't feature here at all. We have other programs like for our older population as well that we have to deliver. So, I mean, we've had excellent staff doing this, but at this point, it's not sustainable in the way we're delivering at the moment. So what we really would like to discuss with you is what the model might look like going forward, and how we could do that together. Clearly, there is going to be a gap. I've gone through the programme today with the officers, and clearly post half term, there is a risk to some of the events that are in the proposed calendar. I'm assured by officers that they can be moved on if we have to move them on a bit later, as long as we meet some of the events so that children are still able to participate in the finals of some of the events. So I'm going to stop there because I'm sure you may want to comment or ask questions.
Okay, Stuart. Thank you, Bernadette, by the way.
Yes, thanks for the update. I appreciate it, and I appreciate having the figures to scrutinise as well. I am disappointed that we're into the term and we're only just getting it, and there is likely to be a gap in service. I only found out there was a meeting with sports leaders by accident, and the information we got back from that was very limited, and I didn't feel it was necessarily appropriate that the officers had been restructured by having to present that news without knowing what the next steps were. And so it feels like we're disappearing into a black hole, where I'm not necessarily convinced that the quality in the past has been where we wanted it. That's why there's so few schools in the partnership. And so I'm not saying change wasn't needed, but I do think it's really unfortunate in the way that this has been brought about, and there's now likely to be a gap in provision and uncertainty at both a primary and a secondary level about how school sport's going to be organised. I obviously can't comment on the wider issues you've just alluded to because they're not actually in the paper. And so I'm not really very happy about where we are at, and I'm not clear about what the direction of travel is going forward. As I've written into emails to both you and Ben, there's all sorts of rumours swirling around, which I think are deeply unhelpful.
Chair, do you want me to respond?
Yes, and then
Okay.
I can add in anything as well.
Thank you for that comment, and I do agree with some of that discomfort you've just described, and it's if I can just say that some of this is tied up with some of our own HR processes, and literally in the last 10 days we became aware that we were losing an individual, and hence why we asked to get something put on this meeting, and the reason you got the paper so late. So it is unfortunate. It's not the order in which we'd want to share this communication with you. I think the meeting with the PE leads is one that they have regularly. I don't think it was put in for that purpose, but I take your point, Stuart, that it wasn't the best way to conduct that message, and it may have caused anxiety for individuals.
I think my
Bernadette.
concern is the children at the heart of all of this. Is we've got thousands of children who have benefited for many years around the varsity competitions and the school sports partnerships, and at the moment there's a great deal of uncertainty, which is not a place I don't understand why we need to be in this position.
So, Stuart, I was going to make the same point, that we shouldn't take our eye off the fact that the main purpose of having this discussion is that we keep a really sharp eye on our children not missing out on really, really important opportunities and school sport, which, you know, I'm deeply passionate about myself. So I want us to try and find a resolution as quickly as possible. And Bernadette has, on the report that was provided, I think it is page 4 of that pack, the bottom paragraph of item number 1 states schools would be notified that RCC will no longer, if schools are notified that RCC will no longer be the host, and any possible expressions of interest from interested schools will be submitted. So that's speaking to the way that Rutland County Council has hosted the school games organiser role, and in other neighbouring authorities, those roles are hosted in schools. So one of the possibilities is that a school could continue to host, whilst there is still funding guaranteed, the role of the school games organiser, which would effectively coordinate all the school games activities, and possibly some others, dependent on which streams of funding were agreed. And so I think what Bernadette is asking for here is that any schools that would be interested in hosting the school games organiser for the remainder of this academic year, whilst the funding is still in place, should notify Rutland County Council, because there is a process to go through with Sport England to reallocate the host from the council to a school. Stuart, your hand's back up.
Yeah, I think that sounds fine, but this should have been done 3 months ago, preferably. And given it hasn't been, what we've got on this paper isn't sufficient for any school to determine whether they would be interested or not. Nor would it be clear. We'd also need to be clear about what the process would be. What is the remit of it? Is it primary and secondary? Is it just primary? What's the funding model? There needs to be a lot more that needs to go out to schools so they're actually in a position to know whether they could even bid for it. What's on here isn't sufficient.
Right, okay.
Chair, do you want me to come in?
Dawn, was that Dawn, or was that somebody else?
It is. No, it's me. So I think in terms of the level of detail, so I think the best way forward would be to set up a meeting outside of schools forum, outside of today, swiftly, to go through that level of detail, Stuart, that both in terms of the funding streams that are definitely available until the end of the financial year, as it is now, and allow you, I'm saying you, Stuart, I mean you as a group, to really understand what those are, what the opportunities are, and we can get some clarification from Sports England in particular about what that process is around the requirements of a host.
Sorry to interrupt, Dawn. I do apologise. I think that's a really good idea, but I don't think it's just a schools forum, because I think there's a number of trusts that are within the county who might well be interested. And it needs to be a broader conversation. A lot of the work, as far as I understand it, is organising primary sports. And you certainly, Catmus Primary isn't a member of the current arrangement, doesn't pay into it, and works very closely with the Rutland Learning Trust, which has been a very successful partnership. And I think there might be interest from that. Perhaps, I don't know, that would be a matter for that trust. There might be another group that might be interested. Yeah. And I think it should be open and transparent. The figures should be shared. It should be clear about what the expectations are, what the deliverables are. And all of that should be upfront and transparent to anybody who is interested, and it should be very clear about how any process would be carried out, including what timelines.
Yeah, and I think that would be the purpose. It wouldn't be, I mean, you've mentioned Rutland Learning Trust, as you've said, they're not part of the Schools Sports Partnership, but actually if there was a different model being pursued by the sector, so to speak, it may well be a much bigger partnership than the current, for example.
And that would be my point about any primary school, and certainly, of course, from an academy secondary point of view, I have the same concerns, although it might be a smaller part of the role. Rutland Sport at a secondary level has been extraordinarily successful in my experience. But of course, it requires the goodwill of the sports staff as well. And uncertainty breeds problems.
So I think that's probably the best way forward from today. So, like I said, it would be a broader conversation and meeting with all interested parties, really, not just the people in this meeting today.
I do agree with that, Dawn. There are two things here. There's the short-term need, which is the remainder of this academic year. The School Games Organiser funding is only guaranteed until March 25. And what Stuart is suggesting there, which is an open and transparent process, which I don't think anybody would disagree with, will require a lot more time, and it will require a lot more clarity, which can't be provided at the moment, because what we want to put together really would be a long-term sustainable programme for school sport across Rutland, and at the moment we can only think towards March.
But Ben, I don't mind a quick sticky plaster solution to get us through. Personally, I'm only speaking for my own views, to get us through the rest of the year. We need that because we don't want to lose what we've got, but then we need a longer term plan that's sustainable. And it might be I can see Carl's got his hand up, so I'll shut up in a minute. And it might be the three secondary principals also need to consider how we keep the secondary varsity going.
Yes, I do think we need to do that.
And then there's also the Melton, of course. The Melton secondaries are involved, so it's not. There's quite a lot of work to do very quickly, given the timeframes that we're talking about. And you're right, I don't want to lose that either, Ben.
So I think we're on the same page in the fact that what we're proposing, what Bernadette is alluding to in the paper there is, would a school be prepared to put their hand up and step in for the remainder of this academic year whilst the funding is guaranteed? And that's the short-term solution. Whereas the long-term solution, I think we need to spend a lot more time on, get a lot more viewpoints and some more information. And the key part of that information is, what does the funding look like? And hopefully by the time we get to the spring, we'll have a clearer idea about what the funding for school games organisers, or whatever iteration of that programme comes through, and the levels of funding that are attributed to it. So, Carl, do you want to make your point now? Sorry, you've had your hand up a while.
I just want to ask a question. Am I absolutely understanding this correctly, Bernadette? The authority are not prepared to run this anymore?
No, we're not saying that, and we would have to confer with, particularly for the schools' games, we would have to confer with Sports England, because we received the grant. We do have a challenge in terms of personnel, and I think what Ben is saying, for the remainder of this academic year, we will have to put a contingency in place about how we cover the offer at the moment, so whether that's the county council delivering it or a different solution. So we're not saying we're stepping away at this point. What I would say is we are probably the only local authority that actually hosts the schools games and the school sports partnership. Rutland is exceptional. It is usually hosted by a secondary school. So having had that information, it seems sensible to explore that with you, whether there was a possibility of embedding it more and having it led by a school, which is considered a really positive model. The idea, I think you're right about, we need to find a solution. Some of the activity that's planned for the second part of this term can be moved into the spring term if we had to, but we do need to address how we will put the events together. Schools haven't signed up for this year's offer yet. There isn't an agreement in place, and the county council hasn't invoiced schools yet for any activity. One of the things, so I think you're right that somebody you described, that sticky plaster solution, I think is a priority. I think the other thing is that opportunity to have a working group and to draw in some of the experiences from colleagues that are not here. And I know Active Together, which is the infrastructure group, would be very happy to work with us to formulate a new model. The county council funds their time and expertise to work across the county and connect us with sports activity in Leicestershire and Leicester as well. So as part of our infrastructure and expert on sport, they'd be happy to work with us to create a new model. And it might be very useful to have their perspective on how it's done elsewhere.
I think initially, though, I wonder whether there's a step that needs to happen now, which is to send out more information so schools are in a position to know what it is potentially that they would be involved in hosting, because in that sense, there isn't a great deal before a meeting. I think that I don't see why that can't be sent out, because presumably that's already there, that's available information. So I think it would be better if that was sent out as soon as possible, because a meeting would be more about a discussion about the process from there on, rather than just disseminating information.
Yes, I can certainly, and I didn't want to, perhaps foolishly, didn't want to laden you with lots of the documentation, but certainly Sports England have a national roadmap, and it sets out what the expectation is for the school's games organizer. And then what appears to be the sport, similarly with the school sports offer, this partnership offer, that's set out in the booklets, the primary and secondary booklets that the team have put together. So we can certainly distribute those, and any of the other grant information we have, we can most certainly share before we have a meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I think there are two things for us to do here, if I'm trying to capture and summarize all of that, is we need to find a short-term solution that gets us through this academic year whilst the funding is guaranteed until the end of March. It effectively means to the end of the academic year. And if any interested parties want to be part of that short-term solution in making sure that we get delivered all the things that we are supposed to deliver up for school games and the other associated programmes, then I think, Bernadette, you need to have expressions of interest as soon as possible, because I think we would need to meet before half term to start to coordinate that. I've got a real concern that many events will be in danger of happening. I know we can say we can rearrange them for the spring, but actually sometimes that's not, I don't think that's an ideal solution. So I think the sooner the better. And then I think a working party, which involves, anybody that's interested in finding the long-term solution, to start work in the spring when the funding arrangements for the long-term strategy for school games becomes a little bit clearer. And that's part of that bigger discussion, Stuart, where we've got different arrangements.
For the sticky plaster, Ben, I think Bernadette needs to contact the head teachers of all of the schools in the county to explain what is happening, because at the moment it's not clear, and that's not acceptable. Things have happened quickly, but head teachers should be informed about what is happening and what the plan is. This is affecting a very large number of children and the sporting offer across the entire county, because some of the offer, as I understand it, all schools have access to, and some of it you pay in for. And schools have to do things like hire minibuses, have staffing in place. There's a load that happens within a school context. It's not just the bit that the council organises. And so it's not just express an interest. There needs to be a briefing paper to head teachers, and it needs to be quick. And then there needs to be an opportunity for head teachers to then contact Bernadette and say, I'm willing to help out, or I'm more interested in the longer term solution. But there needs to be clarity, and a clarity of communication that's been distinctly lacking, I'm sad to say.
Bernadette, is that something that you can do in terms of communicating the current picture to Rutland head teachers and then putting a timeline in place for them expressing interest once they've got the full picture and all the information?
Just on a technical matter, Chair, the expressions of interest, if it's around being prepared to formally to host the school's game, those expressions of interest don't come to the local authority. They go to Sport England.
Yes.
But I think what you're describing, a school potentially offering to organise or take forward for this academic year, the offer. Am I correct? Is that correct?
Yes. Because otherwise, like you alluded to in your paper and when you presented, you haven't necessarily got the staffing in place with the expertise and experience to deliver the school games offer for this year.
Is the local authority able to port that funding to another school, given what you've just said, Bernadette, given it's Sport England money?
That is possible, Stuart, yes.
Yes.
Well, how do we know that? Because that's just contradicted what Bernadette has just said. And again, why is that not being communicated?
There is quite, I mean, I haven't provided you with that level of detail, but there is quite a structured process that if the local, particularly around the schools games, if the local authority are suggesting they want to cease being the host, then they would inform the Sports Council, who would then go to the schools and seek expressions of interest. Once they're received and they go into Sports England, then there is that. And that
sounds like a longer term plan rather than the sticky plaster to get through this academic year, unless I'm misreading or misunderstanding what you've said.
No, I mean, it sounds like quite a laborious process, but that's what would have to happen for the short term solution.
Yeah.
So for the short term solution, Sport England would need to determine where this funding was to go for the short term to get us through the rest of this academic year.
Correct.
And so schools need to know sooner rather than later and need to understand what the parameters are and what the process is to determine if they're interested in doing that.
The other part of the offer, the school sports partnership, you have much more flexibility. That's a local arrangement. You have the flexibility of those schools who are participating to determine how you want that delivered going forward.
And is that the secondary aspect, Bernadette?
Primary and secondary.
Because again, I think that all of that needs to be clearly communicated out and what you're expecting of schools, so that if we do, for example, the secondaries need to get together and agree what happens the rest of the year, then at least we know we've got to do that.
Yeah, I mean, from a secondary perspective, there isn't a great deal of coordination that Active Rutland have. It largely resides within the individual PE teams. I'm more concerned about the primary activities that would continue and the sports leadership that's associated with those. Craig hasn't said anything yet, and he's got his hand up, so I'm just going to hand over to Craig before we move on.
Thanks. I'd echo what Stuart said about the timelines. Can you just clarify something? So Sport England haven't been told that the county council aren't continuing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So we're talking about it stopping, but they haven't been told yet. So we are in a bit of a thing, and like Stuart said earlier, it all seems the timeline seems a bit odd. We started the term. Obviously, head teachers and staff are aware that the personnel's changed, but this should have been prior to that. It all seems very last minute. And then just another point on the primary secondary thing. Coming from a different county, and I think this was said earlier, usually it's the secondary school who takes it on and does run the primary thing. So I know clearly it's different here where the secondaries and primaries are separate, but that is a model that works successfully. And I wonder if that would be what Sport England are looking for. Bernadette might have more information on that, but that's my thoughts. Thank you.
I think just one thing on the your first point, Craig, around the timeline and how our hand has been forced because of in the last 10 days we have found out that we won't have the actual physical personnel to deliver in the transition way that we were hoping to. So this is why our hand has been forced in the short term. But so otherwise we would have been looking at that longer term kind of solution from now, but for the kind of following so our hand has been forced, and unfortunately through HR processes that took place over the summer, we weren't able to, until those processes had been completed formally, we weren't able to go out publicly to you as school leaders to kind of start to plan more effectively for the longer term. So it's a combination of the two things. It's not helpful in terms of the way we would have wanted to communicate change, but our hand was forced in the last couple of weeks.
I think one of the problems, as I understand it, there has been a communication that's gone out that's explained that about the personnel and the changes. I'm not sure whether that's come from yourselves or not, but I think, like Stuart said earlier, we really need a communication from the council saying, I completely agree with Stuart, it needs to go to head teachers so head teachers know what's going on, because there is an awful lot of things, and those within the partnership are making plans, and there is a lot of logistical things that go on with that. So I'd support that being done as soon as possible.
Thank you, Bernadette.
Thank you, Chair. Craig, I just wanted to clarify. I don't think, and I apologise if that was the impression given, we weren't coming to the meeting to suggest that the County Council was ceasing being the sports games hosting the sports games organizer. I was explaining to you that it is potentially another option. So we're not saying at this point we've approached the Sports England to say we're not going to do it anymore. That's not the case at all. It was just to explain to you there are other models, and would that be something that schools would want to engage in looking at another model?
That's why I think, Bernadette, we need a full briefing paper that explains it in black and white what the options are and gives head teachers the opportunity to be consulted on what is an important decision.
Right, okay. So I'm going to thank everybody for their contributions towards that item. I think we've got a clear action there for Bernadette. If you could publish a briefing paper to head teachers as soon as you're able to, with an outline of the current situation and a deadline for people to express an interest in taking responsibility in the short term, and then for us to have a long-term solution, which it will be a working party. It doesn't have to be limited to members of Schools Forum, of course. Right, we spent a lot of time on that, and Lucy, you've been really, really patient. You're next on the agenda. So early years working group, I'm handing over to you at this point.
Thank you. I was trying not to say, and what about early years through all that, because I thought we won't add that into the discussion at this point. Obviously, I submitted the paper through. It's been a particularly fascinating time in the early years sector. I feel like we have had to hit the ground running with kind of not only changes in government, but also rollouts of expansions to entitlements and all sorts of other things going on. I am pleased to sit here today and actually say that we have been speaking through both sufficiency data and to colleagues across the early years in Rutland, and a good percentage, more than half of people and providers are now saying that they do actually feel like they have sustainable businesses going forward. And I think that's a real positive thing, because if you listen to the national picture, it's a very different situation. Something that is still a little bit of a bone of contention with early years providers across Rutland is the lower rate that we receive for our funded places. So our 2-year-olds and our 3- and 4-year-olds, made unhelpful, I think, by the publication of the national data, which puts us as one of the lowest recipients of that. So we receive, I think, the 2nd lowest rate nationally for our 3- and 4-year-olds and our 2-year-olds. Whilst we also then live in a county that is notoriously high on costs. So it was a consideration. I do understand, and part of the reason for me ensuring that I get this message across is I do know that budgets are tight, but I don't think I would be doing my early years colleagues any justice if I didn't kind of bring that to the attention of this group and say that, you know, we do need to be looking at making sure that that rate that we send out to our providers is sufficient. One of the solutions that we already came up with as a working group and with officers at the local authority is making sure that the training, so some of that money that we do top slice from the DSG for early years, put that to some good use with supporting the sector. And one of the recommendations I put was around exploring options to support the providers. The transition to 30 hours for babies from 9-month-olds next September can be a huge financial tie. So there may be settings that from a cash flow perspective are struggling. And I just think it's something that we do need to put definitely on our agenda, that whilst we are feeling stable, things are about to really change again. And obviously there's a lot of noise at the moment in Labour and its big changes that it's intending to do across our sector. And we usually don't respond positively when there's lots of action going on in early years. So we tend to go into crisis thinking rather than planning. So some of the things I wanted us to look at is sustainability support and how we can look to continue to provide support for our sector so that providers can support themselves. And then also looking at the funded rates and just see if we can open up a discussion around what that looks like as forum members. That's it. Questions?
That's a really detailed overview. Thank you. Thank you so much. Open it up for comments and questions from colleagues. No? Okay.
Oh, that was nice. I will just also add it. I was really proud to represent Rutland at a conference where the Department for Education was citing the fact that at the time of getting codes validated for the new expansion to the entitlement, we sat at the highest codes converted, or whatever the technical term was. So I did feel very proud to fly the flag for Rutland at that, to think that we're actually proactively as a sector doing some really good stuff. So
that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, okay, on to item 12 then, which is Jill and pupil place planning.
Sorry, Chair. Lucy's report is asking the Schools Forum to approve 2 items. It's asking the Schools Forum to approve the development of a sector recruitment stability plan, which would address the ongoing challenges in attracting and retaining qualified early years staff, and they are being asked to approve a local authority skills analysis and training programme.
I do apologise for that oversight. I'd just gone from the agenda where it said for information only. So we do have a decision. So Lucy's paper at the top of page 39 asks us to approve the development of a sector recruitment stability plan, and then also a local authority skills analysis and training programme.
All those in favour of approving the development of a sector recruit? Oh, Stuart has his hand raised, Chair.
I don't know whether that was an early vote or whether it's a question. Stuart's just quick off the mark.
Just an early vote, just keen.
Keen to move this one along, Stuart. I like it.
No, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. Early years is
Thank
definitely underrepresented and underfunded. I absolutely think it's a good idea.
So, all those in favour of approving the development of a sector recruitment stability plan, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 4. That's 5. All those against? Stephen, is that a hand raised for against? No, thank you. The system takes a while to think about it. Right, that's fine. Any abstentions? No, that's all approved, Chair. And the next item, the Schools Forum has been asked to approve a local authority skills analysis and training programme. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against, please raise your hands. Any abstentions? No, that's all approved then, Chair. I'm ready to go on to pupil place planning. Thank you.
Jane. Okay, Jill, over to you.
Thank you. Just to say the word, it was validation, Lucy, about the codes being validated. The early years, just touching on, I mean, Lucy touched on it, but from the 2024 sufficiency assessment, in terms of pupil places, we have at the time 32% spare capacity, which it depends on the time of year that these numbers, because numbers fluctuate throughout the year. At the time of the year that was taken, which was the end of the spring, that was a number that we would expect it to be, because numbers increase in the summer to do with birthdays, and then children move to school and numbers drop again in the autumn term. So we consider that to be I mean, what we wouldn't want to see is too much sufficiency, because going back to Lucy's comment about sustainability of the sector, obviously spare places means children are not being paid for and money isn't coming into the sector. But at the moment we feel that there is sufficiency. We're not feeling pressure. Lucy touched on the expanded entitlements and the offers that more children now can receive funded places. Indications are that actually a lot of the children, whilst all of that high number are being validated and those places being taken up, a lot of it appears to be parents who are already having their children in those settings, and it's just a switch of funding rather than an increase of numbers of children. But we're watching this very carefully. Historically, we would have done an annual childcare sufficiency assessment. We're now doing a termly childcare sufficiency assessment more formally, but also through our early years funding mechanism Synergy, we are also able to keep a look at the figures through that as well. But yes, absolutely agree with what Lucy was saying as well, in terms of that recruitment retention is really important, as is business modelling and financial management. Primary school places, this time of year there are some schools that are oversubscribed in primary class year groups, but there does continue to be good capacity across the county. Secondary school places, however, there does continue to be the pressure on places in secondary schools, which means that in some year groups, particularly the years 10 and 11, there are no spare places across the sector. Whilst at the moment we do have a little bit more flexibility in years 7 and 8, that is a point in time, and we know that those numbers with the way that houses are being sold and families moving, that those places could be taken. We're continuing to see that high percentage of out-of-county applications into our schools. At the time of the last time that we looked at the data, which was at the beginning of this academic year, well, sorry, at the end of last academic year, for the start of this academic year, there were 45% overall out of county. But bearing in mind at Casterton it's 65% and Uppingham 57%, it's because the location of Catmos does mean there's only 18% out of county children there, but that does continue to put a pressure on in-year applications. We had a meeting with the DFE pupil place planning representative last Monday, and they're fully aware of the situation, and usually as go away, leaving the meeting, scratching their heads. But yes, that's where we are at the moment. But we are in that position that we are seeing some flexibility within our secondary schools, but in the earlier year groups, capacity in our primary schools and capacity in our early years sector. Whistle stop.
Thank you very much, Jill. I'm going to open that up to comments and questions from the rest of the group. Okay, thank you very much. Really useful update. Okay, so item 13 is the work plan for the year, which begins on page 41 of the pack.
Thank you, Chair. Next meeting is the 12th of December. We currently have no agenda items for that meeting, but if anybody would like to have an item raised, please just contact Democratic Services and I'll get it added and get it all approved for you.
Thank you, Jane. And have you had any other business sent to you in advance?
No, Chair, we have not been notified of any urgent business.
Okay, so the final thing to cover then is meeting dates for the year. Jane's already mentioned the next one on Thursday, the 12th of December, which will be on Teams. Then Thursday, the 13th of March, 25 on Teams, and we'll conclude the year on Thursday, the 12th of June, and that will be a face-to-face meeting in the council chambers. Right, unless I can see any other raised hands, I'm going to call the meeting to a close there. I'm sorry it overran, but there were some really important decisions, and I thank everyone for their attendance and contribution.
Thank you, Chair. Meeting closed at 17:02. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Jane. Really helpful as